All right, so we have a report coming from Ars Technica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they cite multiple sources.
Yes.
That Valve is going to be coming out with a handheld gaming PC, codenamed the Steam Pal.
That's
and
awful.
It will run a large number of Steam games via Linux and could launch as early as the end of this year. The report goes on to say that it's basically very similar, not necessarily in size, it is bigger, but it's kind of similar to like a Switch. So it's got a screen, it's got the controllers on there and the joysticks and the buttons, and they're on the side. They obviously the parts with the controllers don't come off like a Joy-Con. But they keep comparing it in this article to, it's very similar to like a Switch, obviously though without switching because it doesn't dock into anything necessarily. But yeah, it will all just be a all-in-one PC that you can just take on the go. All that they really talk about, they don't give any kind of dimensions or anything like that because, it's just multiple sources. But they do say it is quite wide when compared to a Switch. And there's also no word yet whether or not it's going to be, the inside is going to be handled by either AMD or Intel. I'm kind of hoping it's AMD because I feel like if it's Intel, man, that thing, you're going to need a big old fan in that thing. But, I mean, you probably will need a big old fan regardless.
Regardless, right?
I mean,
Didn't someone just request that in the community like a couple episodes ago?
It was Nathan Dugas, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so his prayers might be being answered here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like this kinds of stuff has been like CESs from all over back in the years. Like, oh yeah, we're going to have a handheld gaming PC. I feel like this has been a thing that's been in the ether from people. And it's never really gotten this much as far as this far along, seemingly. Again, it's just anonymous sources, so take that for what you will. But I mean, what do you feel? I feel like if someone were going to pull this off, Valve is the one that would do it and give it a shot.
I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, how good can it be? When you call it gaming, you're like, okay, well, which tier are we talking about? Are we talking about a Switch is a gaming handheld too, but like people say it doesn't look very good. We've all seen The Witcher on there, and people think it looks ridiculous. So what are we supposed to expect? Are we supposed to expect like, the NVIDIA 1080 is that the graphics we're looking at, or are we looking at just everything, potato version of everything? And then, like you're saying, what do we do with the battery? What do we do? What are we doing with the screen? What are we doing with the controller? What I don't want it to be is just another streaming handheld. Like, oh, well, what we meant was you play it from your computer, actually, and you stream your Steam games from there. That's what I would not want it to be. It feels like we have those things already, and you guys know my feelings about streaming. But if you link it to PC gaming, then like the game that it's the keep up game when it comes to PC. So it's like there's nothing that's going to be interchangeable about it. It's not like you're going to be able to up the GPU ever. And so to me, it's like, what are we talking about here? You know what I'm saying? It's
how obsolete is how quickly is this going to be obsolete? Basically,
and quick.
My whole and my thing is, do we really need it? Like, do consumers? Is this a need, or is this adding to something just to try and get on the hype?
I think it's a need. I just don't know how well it can be done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be really souped up, and then what's the price point too? Like, what? Because it's got to be way more than the Switch, right? I mean, this is going to be a good chunk of money, and it has to be powerful to be able to run the things that you want to do, especially if you're doing it handheld. So I don't know if I see I don't see the need for it, but at the same time, it's like, all right, well, if you're going to do this, you better smash it, because if there's a need there and you're going to fulfill it, it needs to be pretty perfect.
I don't know. And I know I joked about this the last time we mentioned it, but in all sincerity, like, if it's bigger than a Switch, at what point do you just not get a gaming laptop?
Yeah, and a Bluetooth controller.
Yeah. Like, is it just going to be a Lenovo Yoga with a joystick? Like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, Chris, as somebody who's been on the verge of wanting to build a gaming PC for like the last 3 years, does this something that excites you, or are you like, well, once I
No.
get it, it's boo boo, and I'm playing at 720p?
I mean, I don't take so much issue with it if it were, lower resolution and all that kinds of stuff. I mean, because that's quite frankly what I would expect it to do.
It needs to be.
Or to
Yeah,
be.
sure.
Yeah. But
Even though these phone screens are crazy.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, but I mean, I just don't think that it's going to run like hardcore stuff. It may run the games, but there's no way that's going to run them the way that you would envision. And you don't want it to, because the battery life is going to be nothing, or it's going to be loud as all get out. It's this big port at the top where this fan's like blowing constantly. Like, you just don't want any of that stuff. And I mean, you can make devices, I mean, off of ARM that can run things really well. Of course, the games have to then be compiled for that, and you could do that in a way where it wouldn't be having to use a lot of power and all that kinds of stuff. But I mean, then the games will have to be rebuilt, and is the developer really going to want to do that so that you can play on your Steam Pal? I mean, I
That
just
was
don't.
my next question.
I don't see that being a thing, and I personally am not really much for the handheld stuff. I mean,
Right.
the vast majority of the games that I play on any kind of handheld device, and I have a Vita and I have a light switch, most of the time I just don't think it's a very good experience, just quite frankly. I mean, I think I may have enjoyed Breath of the Wild a little bit more if I could play on TV. I still don't think the game would have ultimately been for me, but just with a legit controller rather than stuff connected to the thing. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not like, I mean, I do think the Switch has pretty good ergonomics for what it is, but I still just don't feel like playing like this. It just doesn't really.
Right.
Only certain games that really works. Like I'm going to get here at the end of next month. I'm going to get Mario Golf Super Rush or whatever it's called. I feel like that's going to play great. I'm
Yeah, of
super
course.
looking forward to that. But I mean, a lot of the other games, and so if it's a PC and it's like massive, and you're like, oh, you gotta lean back, and because it's gonna get so heavy, and I don't know. I have no idea what to fathom, because it all sounds ridiculous in my head.
Well, it makes
until
me
I see it.
it makes me think of the Game Gear, right? Like, we had the Game Boy, which
Yes.
was out and which was fine, but then you had Sega. They were like bigger screen, in color, all these things, right? And you're like, yeah, that sounds great, and it didn't do anything. And
right.
it's because like it didn't fit at the time what we actually wanted. And this sounds like that. Like, okay, the Switch, especially the original, like, I don't know if I'd want bigger than that, and I've got big hands. You know what I'm saying? But
Yep.
and I've got a case
Right.
on my Switch and everything like that, makes it a little bit thicker. But like you're saying, bigger, heavier. What's the battery life? If we're
Yep.
talking about playing PC games, like, what's the hard drive inside that thing? Am I just constantly buying memory sticks and stuff like that? So to me, it's like, come on, Valve, don't do it. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Like, it
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Because
feel like
you got to
this is
remember
a
the other
waste.
thing. The other thing didn't work either. Like the little Alienware, little take it everywhere Steam box or whatever it was called. Like, just don't do it, Valve. Like, I don't know who is it for? Because
when you mention
gamers,
it-
hardcore gamers, like the fidelity. You're
Yeah.
not giving them that.
Yeah.
I think the more that I think about it, since you brought it up, the Game Boy is the only handheld I've ever been like, this is perfect. I don't have any issue with this.
Weren't you like that with the Vita? No.
No, I mean, I liked the Vita better in some respects, but I think that had more to do with the library. The games were more what I was interested in
Gotcha.
than a lot of the stuff that I can get on the Switch. It's still, at the end of the day, like, I'm playing handheld, and that's fine for now, but I'd really rather be on a screen and on my, PS4
Yeah.
or
But
whatever.
would you agree that the Vita would the Vita, to my shoot, I might be remembering wrong. It didn't have R2 and L2, right?
No. If it would have
If it
had
would
the
have had
button
that-
layout that the Switch has,
Yes.
with the analog sticks
It'd
next
almost been perfect.
next to each other where it needs to be, I feel like I would have liked it way more.
Yeah, I totally.
But the fact
agree.
that so many of the games, like when I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 2 or 3 on there, or any of those, or a game like that, it's like I'm having to rely on back touch, and it's like it works, but it's like I really just need buttons. It's like if they made a Vita 2, made it about the size of the light switch screen wise, and just gave me all the legit buttons that a DualSense has, I feel like I'd be fine, because I'm willing to forgive the reduction in resolution and stuff because I'm
Handheld.
being able to be mobile with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. But it's just there's always been some component that's just like, there's some jank here. And even with the light switch, there's just times where I'm just like, this aspect feels janky to me, and I can't remove my mind from, like, if I was just on a controller and a TV, this would be better.
Right. Totally. I totally agree. Don't do it, Valve. It seems like seems like a waste of money. Like, for who? Gosh. Now,
especially if it's pricey, like they're gonna price themselves right out. Nobody's gonna buy it.
I mean, I understand it sounds good. You know what you give people is a handheld gaming PC, and you're like, there's a reason we haven't had one yet, unless they got some crazy technology that we have no idea about, and they've made a graphics card this big that's amazing. I just don't see it. I don't see it scratching the itch that PC gamers want.
Yeah.